Hey, what's up everybody? Jamie here, lead anchor at the Sharon News Department. Hey, about 2 months ago we brought you a news story regarding the Trump administration announcing travel restrictions kicking back in when it comes to travel to the country of Cuba. Well, as of today, June 5th, 2019, U.S. citizens are no longer allowed to legally travel for leisure purposes to the country of Cuba via cruise or airplane. Stay tuned to find out how cruise lines are reacting and what they're doing to take care of their passengers. Now, like I said, about 2 months ago, National Security Advisor John Bolton came out with a bold statement regarding U.S. travel restrictions to Cuba being reinstated to how things were prior to the Obama administration changing things up back in 2016. Now, they cited a lot of different reasons, and one of the main reasons was to put a stranglehold on U.S. dollars that were being spent in Cuba, with the belief that it was the Cuban government who was ultimately taking those travel dollars for their own use, and that the travel industry was not being taken care of, and those dollars were not staying within the travel industry itself. Now, the U.S. government firmly believes that Cuba is in line with other countries like Venezuela and Nicaragua who are not taking proper care of their citizens, and they want to make sure that U.S. dollars are not being spent in Cuba without that money properly going to the citizens and the great folks of Cuba who are working hard to earn that money. Now, there are still a number of ways for U.S. citizens to visit the country, including humanitarian efforts, religious activities, certain business functions, official U.S. business, government business, and the likes of that. But as far as leisure travel goes, it looks like for now those trips are done. No longer will planes be flying into Cuba, and what we're here to talk about today is no longer will cruises be calling on ports in Cuba. Now, with travel restrictions being lifted previously, Cuba has become a very popular destination for cruisers. About 143,000 people visited Cuba by cruise ship just from January 1st to April 30th this year alone. But as of today, all major cruise lines have stopped going to Cuba and are all in the process of rerouting their cruise ships, changing itineraries to adjust for these new travel laws. Now, you would assume that this should come as no surprise to any of these major cruise lines. I mean, it was first discussed about 2 months ago, and everyone had a heads up on the fact that this could be coming. Hopefully these cruise lines took a little bit of time to potentially plan for this so that changes go smoothly for them and in turn for their passengers. If there are any cruise lines that are caught off guard by this news, well then shame on them. Now, these are certainly unusual circumstances for all these cruise lines. I mean, they're in a situation where they can pretty much set and change any policy or procedure they have with regards to what to do about these itinerary changes, how to take care of their passengers, so forth and so on. And a couple of the cruise lines have already made major announcements as to what they will be doing for their passengers who have already booked and are looking forward to sailing to Cuba. So let's talk a little bit about what some of these cruise lines are offering their passengers. Now, Carnival is the first cruise line right out of the gate to make a quick announcement, pretty simple and pretty straightforward. If you remain on the sailing that was originally scheduled to visit Cuba that has had an itinerary change, you'll receive a $100 onboard credit per passenger. If you choose to change the itinerary and the sailing from the one that was originally scheduled to call on Cuba, you can do so without penalty, and you will receive a $50 onboard credit per passenger. And if going to Cuba was the only reason you were getting on that cruise ship in the first place, Carnival has announced that they will give you a full refund for any monies paid towards your cruise if you decide to straight out cancel that cruise. Now, of course, if you have paid for any excursions through Carnival Cruise Lines that were going to be happening in Cuba, if you visited there, that money will be refunded as well. So we like the fact that Carnival came right out with a quick announcement. Again, simple, straightforward, letting folks know exactly what it's going to be doing. Now today, Royal Caribbean announced their strategy as well for what they're going to be doing to take care of passengers. They did announce that for all 2019 sailings, they have secured alternative ports, so any cruise scheduled to go to Cuba will not be canceled, they will just have an itinerary change. For bookings within final payment date, which basically means you've already paid in full and your cruise is coming up pretty quickly, each cabin will receive a 50% refund of the cost of their cruise, excluding port fees and taxes, posted to their onboard account. Any monies not used during the time of their cruise will then be refunded back to the original booking. Now, any booking outside of the final payment date, which means that it has not yet been paid in full, those passengers will receive a 50% reduction in the cost of their cruise. Now that's a pretty good deal and pretty generous offer by Royal Caribbean. If you have already paid in full, then you will get a refund of that 50% reduction. So any way you slice it, Royal Caribbean is definitely enticing their passengers to keep their current booking and stay with whatever itinerary changes they are making. Now, of course, if you scheduled a shore excursion for Cuba through the cruise line Royal Caribbean, they will give you a full refund of any dollars that you spent on that. And if you are just choosing to cancel your cruise outright, you will receive a full refund on what you paid for that cruise that you want to cancel. Now, Norwegian Cruise Lines is another cruise line that called on Cuba quite often. They have announced that they are letting passengers know that they are making changes to the itinerary, but they really haven't come out with any other strategy regarding compensation or anything they're doing in addition to just basic itinerary changes. So we're yet to see if they're going to decide to do a little something special for folks that are losing out on the chance to go to Cuba, or if they're just simply going to switch itineraries. Now, brand new cruise line Virgin Voyages, which hasn't even started sailing yet, but who does have scheduled itineraries with visits to Cuba, have already announced that they will be making itinerary changes and notifying their passengers. And they are reminding people that with Virgin, you can change your itinerary or change your cruise date without any penalty. So that will be an option for folks as well. But at this time, that's everything that's been announced. And that kind of makes sense because they are not even quite sailing yet. So it's probably not a huge priority for them to make any immediate adjustments or big announcements. And finally, MSC Cruise Lines has made a simple announcement that they will be letting their passengers know of any itinerary changes in the coming days as soon as that information is available. And that's pretty much it. And I guess when you think about it, that does make sense. I mean, these cruise lines, they don't have to really do anything special for the passengers who are losing out on the chance to go to Cuba. I mean, it's not their fault. It is out of their control. And as far as the language goes in the cruise contracts that they have with the passengers, well, the cruise lines are able to change itineraries virtually with no notice. It happens all the time for weather, and this is another thing that's totally out of the cruise line's control. Now, you take a look at a couple companies like Carnival and Royal Caribbean, well, these guys are the big players. And they're certainly doing some special things with regards to taking care of their passengers. In particular, Royal Caribbean. They've really stepped up with that 50% refund program that they're offering for folks. And when you think about it, that kind of makes sense. Royal has had a rough go of it lately with regards to some of their ships, including the Oasis of the Seas being damaged and losing out on multiple weeks of revenue. Changes they've made to the ships that were going to be sailing out of the UK that are now being rerouted to sail out of the US so that they can visit on the perfect day at Coco Cay. That certainly gave them a little bit of bad press. And of course, the Allure of the Seas, which is currently dealing with some mechanical issues, and Royal is choosing to change itineraries instead of send the ship in immediately for any major repairs and dry dock services. So seeing Royal step up and throw out a very good offer to folks who are losing out on the chance to go to Cuba, well, we'd like to see that. So good job for you guys, Royal, and also Carnival, for doing these extra things to take care of your passengers. Now, in addition to what we've talked about here, we will always recommend, guys, that if you have an upcoming cruise that's going to Cuba and has a planned stop in Cuba, please make sure you contact the cruise line directly or your travel professional to make sure that you have the exact correct information about what's being offered to you and what your options are with regard to your cruise. Everything we're getting is direct from the cruise lines at this time, but this information can change pretty quickly, and you want to make sure that if you have something special that's coming to you for your inconvenience and your troubles, you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that. So definitely look into that directly. Listen to what we're telling you, but go out and do your own research as well to make sure that you're getting taken care of. Now, we sure appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your day to watch the video. We hope that this information has been helpful to you. If you're into cruise news, cruise vlogs, cruise reviews, and anything else has to do with cruising, we sure hope you'll think about clicking the subscribe button, checking out other content that we already have on the channel, keeping an eye out for upcoming content that we're releasing. Make sure that you hit the notification bell so you're always aware when something new comes out, including some of our new Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas vlogs that are on their way in the coming weeks. Make sure you tune in every Monday night for the Monday Night Live show where we talk about cruising and all kinds of other things. Stop by and join us on Facebook at the Sharon at Sea Cruise Crew so you can share all your cruise pictures, experiences, and interact with a lot of great folks. And remember, from myself, Sharon and Matthew, everyone here at Sharon at Sea, happy cruising.